now do a roll call and would ask that members confirm their attendance when their name is called so that this is clear in the recording and can also be recorded in the minute. Chair.
Present.
Councillor Cook.
Present. Good morning.
Richie Johnson.
Yes, here. Thank you.
Thank you. And Hussein Fatwa.
Present. Morning.
Morning, thank you. And we have apologies from Callum Leask and Alison McLeod.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. We turn to the agenda. There is a note there on the agenda that's not part of the agenda, which is the risk appetite statement. I think that's a very useful reference document for us to bear in mind our various risk dimensions and risk appetites and so forth. Item 1.1, do members have any declarations of interest or transparency statements that they wish to make? I don't see any. No. Okay, there are no items of exempt business. 3.1 is the minute of the previous meeting, which was held on the 17th of June 2025. First of all, is it acceptable as an accurate record of that meeting? Everybody okay with it? Good. So that minute is approved. Go on to the business planner at 3.2. I'm glad to see that we've got the budget savings update as a standing item. Anyone have any questions on the business planner? Note that, shall we? Or agreed rather. Can agree the business planner as it stands. That's great. Next is 4.1, the budget savings and monitoring update. We've got Ms. Bularan present. Does anyone have any questions on this item? Hussein.
Thank you very much, Chair. It's not so much a question, but I always believe in giving credit where credit is due. So just want to welcome Bernadette to her first meeting of a committee, but also I appreciate the iterations this report has taken through the consultation cycle. I think it reads in a more enhanced way now. And I think that additional narrative and clarity is very much to be welcomed. So I just wanted to put that on the record, Chair.
Okay, thank you for that. Then Richie.
Yeah, thanks, and hi, Bernadette. Thanks for the report. A couple of questions on it. I think, firstly, in terms of Q1, that's showing a positive financial position at this stage, and I guess that's absolutely to be welcomed. And I appreciate you've got some caveats in there around this being early in the year in terms of what the final outcome might be. And I guess my first question it is around that kind of risk. And obviously I've got a couple of questions on the paper first, but it's just around that. If you look at last year and previous years, then what we found is in Q2, Q3, that's where I guess you get into the year and get more kind of shift, if you like. So I guess my first question is, how confident are you at this stage, appreciating it is early, and if you've got some early warning markers in there around the types of things that can go in the wrong direction, if you like, and what we can do to mitigate that. So I guess it's just that, how confident are you that this position will be sustained, and yeah, just that importance of that really close monitoring in the next number of months, particularly to make sure you don't kind of go too far off kilter, would be helpful. Thanks.
Ms. Bularan.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for your question, Richie. If you don't mind my calling you by your first name. All right. In due recognition of the lessons learned in the previous period, okay, we are very mindful of the fact that, hey, we are still facing a lot of challenges as an entity in collaboration with our Chief Officer, Ms. Fiona Mitchell-Hill. We are instigating and implementing a lot of tools within the IJB to ensure that, although we can't promise that within this fiscal year we will be able to turn things around in comparison to the previous period, but all efforts are being exerted to move that way forward. Ms. Mitchell-Hill, for example, has started instigated the budget savings oversight group, which meets Wednesday fortnight. In collaboration with this board, the Risk Audit and Performance Committee, we are regularly monitoring our performance in comparison to the budget. Not only that, we are also comparing our spends to our available funding, which, as you all know, is very challenging at the moment. We are also implementing or instigating a budget holder training exercise or workshop, whereby our budget holders will be better equipped in the art and science of finance management. So that will include budget management, cash flow management, funding management. We will actually be having that workshop starting off with the senior leadership team on the 3rd of September. On top of that, we're trying to regularize our reporting in alignment along with NHS and the council. And we're also trying to sort of like bring these two very different entities together in reference to like the reporting timelines, how do we recognize our accruals, our outturns, our forecasting procedures, so that we can better grasp our performance and our results going forward. I don't have a crystal ball, Richie, so I cannot really say what's going to happen in the future, but I've got very positive vibes that under the leadership of Miss Mitchell Hill, we can improve things further. And I can never, ever be more confident of that statement than, yeah, what I can say right now. Yeah. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you.
Thanks. I know
Fiona,
Jonathan and Fiona maybe coming in as well, but I've got one final question afterwards, Martin, if that's okay.
yeah, go for it.
I'm happy to let Fiona and Jonathan come in first, if that's okay. Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. Fiona, Jonathan, you want to come in?
Will I start, Jonathan? Okay. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for the question, Richie. And I guess there's definitely a lot of learning from the last year, Richie. And I guess just to give you, as Bernie, just to build on what Bernie's already said, is there's been a lot of work done round about that. The Budget Saving Oversight Group's a key group for us now, to make sure that we are monitoring that really closely. Our savings, are they on track? And just to be clear, all of our savings were taken out of the budget. So the budgets that were set for everybody as budget holders had the savings taken out. So we are working towards that budget as was set with the money that needed to come out, the 14 million that needed to come out. So I think that's helping people to understand that that's the budget that they've got. But I definitely think that oversight, what we're doing, is definitely much more robust than we had previously, Richie. Is it perfect? No, I think there's always going to be room for improvement, but there's definitely much more oversight. We get Bernie and her team, and Jonathan and the team keep us much more informed or closer informed than we were before. There are meetings, regular meetings with the finance managers and the leads of each member that's got a budget. So all of that's happening much more robustly, and there's much more challenge, I would say, from our finance colleagues around about things when they're starting to go early in if they're starting to go in the wrong direction. That earlier intervention is definitely happening, Richie. So are we perfect? No. Have we come a long way? Yes. And we're still working on that. And I think that scrutiny and monitoring is much more robust than it has been previously. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Jonathan, did you want to come in?
Thanks, convener. I won't cover anything that's already been said, but the one point I was going to draw to your attention, I suppose, was the audit from the external auditors last year, in terms of identifying improvements that could be made. So clearly, we went through a year-end process for 24-25 that picked up on those particular recommendations, and I think that's given us also, dare I say, a tidier start to the financial year, better clarity as to what the spend level is and the underlying spend. And I think that has been the objective of where we were trying to get to over the last 9 months in many respects. What is that underlying spend? And I think we're clearer about what that looks like now at the start of 25-26. But I will just end by emphasising it is earlier in the year. I know we're now in the middle of August or end of August. We have spoken about what the period 4 position looks like internally, and there were no surprises at this moment in time. But there's obviously challenging times in terms of the winter ahead, and we need to recognise that. And Bernie and Fiona have already made mention of obviously the risks in the remainder of the financial year. But I think we've started well, and I think it feels very different to where we've been in the past, if I'm honest. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for that. I think, yeah, I agree. We have made a very positive start from the perspective of the finance monitoring. The end of Q1, that looks like a very stable position, certainly in comparison to previously, and given the very considerable budget pressures we're under, I think that does demonstrate that there's a real attitude of seriousness going on, and I'm very pleased to hear about cultural and training opportunities that are going to be provided, and I think that those will surely help to cascade the ambitions of the strategic plan and the delivery operational plan. But I mean, there are still challenges coming up in the rest of the financial year. There is highlighted, for example, the challenges of adult care services. And so I would assume that there's going to be some thought given to redesign of services to try and minimise impacts, whilst at the same time achieve our budget goals and the aims of improved efficiency and transformation and the shift to early intervention and prevention. So I mean that's a lot of very concentrated challenge just in one area in adult social care. So it would be useful, just as a kind of a case study question. I think it would be useful to have more of a sense of how that particular area will be considered and evaluated and changed. Fiona, you put your hand up. Thank you.
Yes, thanks, Chair. And just on your point, so prevention stuff absolutely is part of our strategic plan. We've got a community appointment day again next week about chronic pain. I think all of that stuff is helping towards our prevention agenda, and I think we've all agreed that until we start getting upstream a bit, we can't stop the tsunami that's coming towards us, so we need to do that. You're right about the challenges, and I think health and social care is unpredictable, sadly, but we will do what we can to meet people's needs, and that's what we try to do, and we can't control that, unfortunately. We can't say no because we've got statutory duties to deliver and support people or assess people and work with them to get the necessary care. I think, our adult social care is our biggest budget for a reason, but there's a lot of work being done, and we've got Kate Humphreys who's joined us on a secondment currently, and she's focusing specifically on our social care side of the budgets, just to ensure that we are doing that, reviewing the contracts, working with providers, and working with our teams as well, just to make sure we are being as efficient and offering best value. I think that's something that we're really keen to start using the language of. It's the best value that we can spend our money on. So Kate's a key member of the team this year working on that to ensure that we get that savings that we need to, but make sure that we still meet our obligations that we have to deliver that care. So that bit of work that Kate is leading on is vital to ensure that we make our savings, but we continue to deliver the services that we need to deliver. We obviously also, we had our charging policy that was agreed at the Finance and Resource Committee. That's gone through. That will be annually updated now because we haven't historically done that. So the charging policy and things like that, where we have that opportunity to make sure that we're charging people accordingly for services is a key bit as well for our future going forward. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. And then, so we'll have an update at the next committee meeting. So I'm kind of assuming that that update will help to give us reassurance that the journey is being guided appropriately. We're dealing with the challenges and the pressures. So that's great. Richie, you wanted to come back. You had a second question, didn't you? Sorry.
Yeah, thanks, Martin. Yeah, thank
Yes.
you. It's been partly answered, but it's around the savings and the progress against them. And I think Bernie, sorry, I call it Bernadette, Bernie, and Fiona and touched on it. But that close monitoring of how the savings are progressing is really important. It's reassuring, I think, that in a sense the savings have been taken out of the budget from day one. So in that sense, that kind of sets the bar, if you like, but we appreciate that there can be pressures that come through. So it'd be really important, I think, for this committee to get detailed progress reports on how the savings are progressing. So I appreciate at the moment it appears to be broadly on track. So any initial comment today in terms of are they all on track? Are there any particular challenges? It would be useful to know. But I think what we'd need to see going forward is a bit more detail around what's the RAG status or some means of assessing the progress of the savings, just so we can be assured that that's on track. And if it's not on track, I guess just that the obvious thing would be, what can we do to mitigate that, or how can we continue to look to balance the books, if you like, at the end of the year, which again you've kind of referenced. So I think that extra layer of detail would be really important for us, given that can clearly contribute to the overall bottom line of the budget. Thanks.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I see. Yeah, Fiona has been, and colleagues have been scribbling away there. Fiona, you wanted to come back.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And yeah, absolutely happy to make sure we get that update to you for the next. And I guess that'll give us a wee bit longer into the process, Richie. Just, we're confident now, but it's early in the year. So it'll give us a few more months just to make sure that we've got that. And very happy to do that. And I guess so. One of our savings is not quite going in the right direction. So Kate, who I referred to just previously, she's absolutely got around that service to make sure that are we doing all that we can to make sure we're getting best value. So we've kind of got that reaction already. So we're in around, we're getting additional support in there just to make sure we can get things back on track. But happy to make sure we get an update for the next RAPC. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thanks very much. Malik, I see your hand is up. Did you want to ask a question? I note that you're not a member of the committee, but I'm happy to let you ask a question.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not a member of the committee, but I'm entitled to ask questions. If there is voting, of course, I cannot participate in the voting, unfortunately, but I can ask questions, and you know very well, Chair. Thank you very much. Although my both questions been asked, and Jonathan and Fiona clarified the position, just I would like to welcome Bernadette, and of course, I agree with yourself. You don't have crystal ball. Things are not going to be so easy. However, are you optimistic that you will achieve your target? And my second part of question is, Fiona, as you said that something is not going in the right direction. Can you please clarify which is not going in the right direction? And if I can carry on my third question, although Richie asked both very important questions, my third question is that, as you know, that NHS Grampian is at stage 4. And if keep going this pace, stage 5, Minister will take over NHS Grampian. So what happened to IJB? What will be the issue for us? Will we be better off, or will hinder our position? Are we prepared for the challenges that if the Minister will take NHS Grampian? So these are my 3 questions.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks
Chair.
for those questions. Who would like to kick off with helping to answer those 3 questions? Who would like to pitch in? Fiona first.
I'm very happy to, and Bernie and Jonathan are very welcome to come in if they don't agree with me, but I think we're all on the same page. So thank you, Councillor Malik, for your question. So first, do we think we'll achieve the target? We're certainly working very hard to make sure that we do achieve the target. As I say, Q2 is coming up shortly. We'll have, we'll get more understanding of where we're at, but I'm very hopeful. The team, we're working very hard to make sure we do achieve the target. The expectation is, and the clear expectation has been, is that we will manage a financial balance this year. That's what we said at the beginning of the financial year, and that's what we're working very hard on. So will we achieve it? The expectation is we will. We will certainly be doing everything we can to ensure that we do. Your second question was about what's not going in the right. So our learning disability service is under significant pressure. We've had a service that's had to close because it decided itself, one of our Camp Hill services agreed that they couldn't meet the standards that were required by the Care Inspectorate, so they've had to close. So it's things like that that are out with our control that just add a bit of pressure. So as I say, Kate is working with that team now to try and get some savings, get further savings out this financial year, because we need to get that back on target, because it's not quite on the, it was going in the wrong direction, Councillor Malik. So very early indication that that was going in the wrong direction, and put in additional support to make sure we get that back on track. So, and the work that Kate is already doing, I'm confident that we will get that back within control. Your third question about NHS Grampian and the escalation to level 4. Yes, so there is a website that's been dedicated to, for the government to set up a website about escalation to level 4. It's not fully up yet. That's completely sitting with Scottish Government, but there's an assurance board that oversees NHS Grampian at the minute. And that assurance board is chaired by Stephen Gallagher, who's a director for Scottish Government. They meet every fortnight, and that's to oversee that NHS Grampian are getting robust plans in place. I attended last week briefly at the assurance board for an unscheduled care plan. It's a very positive conversation at the minute, and they are content and happy with the direction that NHS Grampian are going in to try and get back on within their financial balance. We expect them to be escalated to level 4 for about 18 months, maybe 2 years. That seems to be the norm for any health board that's escalated. So that's what NHS Grampian are working towards. We don't have a definite, we've not been told by the assurance board that it'll stop in a year, but we're expecting them to be escalated and have the assurance board, definitely the assurance board, they will make the decision when the escalation goes down or up. But that decision will sit with them. But we expect that the assurance board to be in place for at least 18 months. So will it be, what happens if it gets escalated to level 5? I don't know. We are our own legal entity, obviously, but we are funded partially by NHS Grampian. So if we're escalated, I don't know, that the IJBs are, as I said, legal entities, and we're expected to deliver services. We've got statutory duties. But if it was escalated to level 5, we would need to get guidance from the government what that would look like. But at the minute, the assurance board are assured by the decision, the process NHS Grampian is going through to get their financial balance back get their finances back into balance.
Okay,
That's
very
great.
much.
Thanks very
Thank
much.
you. And Bernie, you wanted to come in.
Yeah, I believe Fiona has given you a lot of insight as regards what's happening, Councillor Malik, and I thank you very much, by the way, for the warm welcome that you've given me. Your questions are actually similar to the sort of questions I sort of ask to Fiona and her team every time we challenge them as regards their performance. I can answer your first question in addition to what Fiona has already said. Do I feel optimistic that we will achieve our target at the end of the year? Honestly, not 100%, but what I am optimistic about is that I've got a wonderful team of people who are very eager to improve things and make things go around in a positive direction. Fiona, Martin, Alison, the rest of the team in IJB, along with this committee, consists of individuals who are just so eager to move positively forward. We know the limitations that we're facing. We know the challenges. It's working around those limitations and challenges that we want to really deliver on the promise that eventually we will be able to turn things around. It's not going to happen overnight. It's a lot of effort, but the efforts are being put in place. It's moving forward, even to my liking, and I don't like things to be going slow. Fiona knows that, Jonathan knows that, but we're getting there, and we're recognizing the issues. And because we do recognize the issues, we're trying and identifying the solutions on the way forward. So that's what I'm optimistic about. As regards the other question regarding the future of the IJB being impacted by the situation going on right now with NHS Grampian, because of this level 4, we are actually engaging with NHSG on a more regular basis. I believe we've already had, if not 2 or 3 meetings with the finance team of NHS Grampian, because we're instigating, implementing further improvements on how we can further align our resources to work on further improving how we manage our funds and our expenses, so that we will not be surprised going forward, and that if there are any red flags, we can identify it early enough so that we can provide the solution earlier than what has happened in the past. I hope that sort of like pacifies your concern regarding the matter.
Great, thanks very
Thanks
much.
very
I
much.
see Sandy. I see Sandy has
Sorry,
his
Chair,
hand
can I
up.
ask a supplementary question? Just a very quick
I
supplementary.
think Sandy wants to come in to assist there.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be brief. I was just developing the point about integration, working with NHS Grampian to give assurance. I think we, the IJB, are going to benefit from some of the things that Grampian are putting in place. So, for example, much stricter controls on procurement, much stricter controls on reimbursement. They will help us because we have to live by the same rules, to put it in sort of short speak. So I think some of their strictures are going to help us. That would be my only just additional point. Thank you, Chair.
Good, some positive synergies going on there. Malik, you wanted to come back?
Yeah, thanks very much, Chair. And I think I got almost clarification from Jonathan and Fiona and Bernadette. Just in case if we are not going to achieve our target, would we be asking from the Scottish Government financial assistance? And my second part is that you used the word lesson learned. Well, I had a lot, so many times from administrations. Did you steal this word from SNP administration, lesson learned? Thank you.
So the first question, can you remind us of your first question?
Yeah, if we cannot target over achieve, if we cannot achieve a target, would we be asking from the Scottish Government for financial assistance?
Jonathan.
I'm sure Fiona can help me. My understanding, Councillor Malik, would be that under the integration scheme, our starting point is a recovery plan. So at this point, I'm seeing the budget and everything that's required from the budget that was set there as is effectively an underlying recovery plan at this moment in time, just by a different name. I think Fiona and Bernie have described the way in which it's being monitored at this moment, and I suppose the changes that are being made around that. So in the first instance, it's to react and respond to any bumps in the road, shall we say, in relation to what the budget savings are, and making sure that we then realign to report on that. And that goes back to Richard Johnson's point about actually, could we get a little bit more detail about how the savings are coming along? And I think there's an opportunity, therefore, to get that across to you in this committee, but also to the IJB. But the integration scheme would see us effectively deliver or put in place a recovery plan, an adjustment to the way in which we're making savings in order to try and resolve that. If that didn't happen, then the next stage is obviously to be in touch with the partners at this point in time, or at that point in time. But the initial stages would be for us to consider what's within our gift as an IJB in order to make those decisions. I don't know if Fiona, was there something you wanted to add to that?
Was just to add that, so we did, Councillor Malik, at the end of 24-25 at the request of through the IJB, we did write to the CABSEC to ask for additional money, but he was very clear that it just is exactly as Jonathan said, that's up to our partners to fund. It wouldn't come from Scottish Government. But we can ask again if need be, but let's, as Bernie and I are trying to give you the reassurances, and I get where Bernie's saying it's a massive challenge to ensure we financial balance, but it certainly won't be down to the lack of the team's efforts to try and make sure we do that in the monitoring. But yeah, we certainly asked before, and that was the CABSEC's response, was it's up to our partners, but we can ask again if we needed to. And sorry, I can't remember your second question, Councillor Malik.
A second question was to Bernard, but don't worry, this was about lesson learned. Thanks very much. I said, thanks, Chair.
Okay, questions are over. Thanks very much for the very helpful answers. We are a risk committee, and I think it's very helpful to go over even long-term risks. So all the discussion's been very helpful. Is the committee content to agree the recommendations on page 15? Everybody content with that? Good.
Yeah,
Thank you
agreed.
very much. 4.2 is a paper from Martin Allen on board assurance and escalation framework. Want to say some comments to introduce this, Martin? Martin?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, the report presents the annual review of the board's assurance and escalation framework. So the framework was formally approved by the IJB back in 2016 and has been reviewed annually. So last time it was reviewed was in April 2024. The 2025 review has been undertaken and the revised version is attached as the appendix to this report. Just to highlight the main changes to the framework this time are in relation to aligning it to the approved partnership strategic plan for 2025 to 2029. So the framework now references the vision, strategic aims, priorities and enablers detailed in the strategic plan. The framework also reflects changes made to the template for the strategic risk register, aligning the language in the register with the framework. And the framework has also received minor housekeeping updates relating to changes to names of posts in the senior leadership team. It is proposed that the framework continues to be reviewed on an annual basis. I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. John?
Yeah, thanks. I'm very happy with the document. I was just interested to kind of get a bit more about the kind of cultural aspects. So particularly people on the front line, every human being makes mistakes. Even Sir Alex Ferguson made mistakes, and normal human nature is to try and cover them up, not tell your boss that you made a mistake. But in fact, it's better if we escalate things up sooner rather than later. So I was just wondering if we've got, I don't know whether it's you, Martin, or whether it's maybe Sandy, could just say a bit about the kind of the cultural stuff that we do to encourage people to say, hey, I got this wrong, we need to fix it.
Yeah, there's a couple of things there, I suppose. I think that the framework is it's probably generic and strategic in its kind of nature for a reason. But I suppose maybe an example around that would be maybe if there was a service level risk that a service is dealing with, the framework does help to provide that kind of escalation process to allow it to go from a service risk to the operational risk register. So maybe a staffing risk specific to a service. However, the kind of governance structures that are outlined in the framework, so the clinical care governance structures that we've got in place, allows that kind of further escalation to even to the strategic risk level, if required. So, for example, if the risk was wider than first thought and it's being felt across more or all of the services. So that's kind of I suppose the governance section behind it. In terms of the cultural side, I see Fiona's wanting to come in. I don't know if she wants to cover off that bit.
Thank you, Martin. Thank you, John, for your question. So I truly believe in psychological safety. I think we need to have that. I think the message is very clear across both the local authority and NHS that we are a learning organisation, and the IGB is absolutely, and the Health and Social Care Partnership, absolutely, that is our ethos and our belief. I guess we would use intelligence to try and make sure that we aren't seeing anything that would have red flags for me, John. So DATEX is the system, the NHS side, used to report any adverse event or incident. You can do that anonymously if you feel uncomfortable to put your name to it. Thankfully, I don't know when I last saw an anonymous report coming in for Aberdeen City Health and Social Care Partnership. That gives me confidence that we work in a culture of no blame. I think that's very much the culture that we do working, and that's something definitely myself as a professional very much believes that we have a code of conduct that I work to, that I'm held account to as well. You know, although I'm the chief officer, I'm still a registered nurse, and I'm very proud of that, and I maintain that, which gives me, and I think that helps in health and social care. We have professional bodies that give us that support and security to have a voice. I think I believe very strongly in people speaking up, and I will always, from a leadership point of view, and my team absolutely will encourage people to share, because we can't help if we don't know. So it's definitely something that psychological safety is very, very important to us in health and social care, to make sure that our teams feel empowered and supported to raise any concerns at any level if they need to. So I absolutely have that conversation when I go out and visit any of our teams, that I want to hear from them, because I can't help if I don't know. And that's definitely a message that I and the wider team share, John. So I guess it's a culture that we all, and it's that the standard we walk past is the standard we accept. So I think we will do that challenge as well. So it goes both ways, but I think we do have a good culture, and certainly from our, whistleblowing events, adverse events that are reported through Datix, we have a high number, which is really good, because people feel confident that they can report things and things will be actioned. Our complaints, again, so we use all of those things as indicators, or I use all of those things as indicators to say, do I have a hotspot? Do I have something that's just giving me a little bit of an alarm bell? So I think we do have a good culture, but I will happily stop speaking and let Sandy come in. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, John. I'm tempted to say even Brendan Rodgers makes mistakes, but if I just move on from that, I guess I just want to pick up a bit about culture to kind of just emphasise to colleagues. We've got a really strong staff governance culture. Martin mentioned clinical governance. We've got a strong staff governance culture as part of that. So, for example, this week we have our joint staff forum that meets regularly with health and social care staff and full-time union reps and full-time staff partnership reps. And I would expect and I would encourage them to tell us in real time any of those concerns that they have, and they do raise them with me. They do raise them when it's needed directly with Fiona. They would not be keeping those things to themselves if they felt they needed to. That's the sort of the culture we would want to have, a very open culture with them. And I would just to assure people who maybe didn't see that day to day, we've got really strong links with those people as an example. And I think that culture of always having them at all our meetings, and even at our, Fiona mentioned earlier on, Martin or Fiona mentioned our budget steering overview group. We've got our partnership rep at part of that meeting. So there's very much a sort of nothing about you without you culture. And I think that does give confidence to people that if there were major concerns, they would be raising them, and they do raise them. And I think you should take some assurance from the fact that you can rely on confidence in them. That is their role, and they do that well. Thank you.
Okay. Thank
Thanks.
you very much.
That's really reassuring. I always think that the cultural side of stuff is more important than the policies and the procedures. But what Fiona and Sandy and Martin said, I find very reassuring.
Yeah, totally. I think it's a really welcome, comprehensive document. Everything it's really helpful to see all of the various components of board business interlocking. It's a really comprehensive strategic view, and it's helpful to have the abstract element, so we see the core priorities of health improvement and of applying and organising our resources to meet those aims, continuing to review and redesign the structure and the modes of delivery. So yeah, I think we're all very, very happy with this paper. If there's no more questions, can members agree the recommendations on this paper? Yes, agreed. And so many thanks, Martin, for this excellent document. Thank you very much. 5.1 is the internal audit update report from Jamie. I did see Jamie here.
Yes, thank you, Chair.
You're there.
Thank you. Our standard report, we provide
You
the
were-
committee updates on the status of the audit plan and then the follow-up recommendations. Given the early kind of time period in the year, we're not there with the audits yet. They're scheduled for Q2. That's the health and social care staffing one. And then IGB financial sustainability will be later in the year. So they'll come to committee as they're completed. And then a really positive position with regards to the recommendations. 11 closed, only 1 carrying forward. And a big thanks to management for engaging with us on the follow-up. I'll take any questions, but again, very much just the standard update at this stage.
Okay. Thank you. So just on page 74, the IJB budget setting and monitoring, there's mention there of action to engage with management. Is that underway? Has it started, or is there a timeline for that? Is such an important set of discussions to have there? Just useful to have an update on where we are with that.
Thanks very much, Chair. I'd let officers come in, but yes, so we've got a current due date of that of September, so I'll be hoping to close that off next month and report that back to this committee around October, November.
Okay, so that's all going
Yes.
well. Okay, that's fine. Richie.
Yeah, thanks, Martin. Just a brief comment, really, rather than a question. It's just good to see some recommendations being closed off. I know that's not always the case, as I think Jamie's alluding to, and I appreciate these things don't just happen. It takes a bit of effort to do that, and I guess just for our wider assurance, it is good to have as little outstanding recommendations as possible. So just to acknowledge that that's a really helpful position to be in. So thanks to all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Jonathan, you wanted to contribute?
Thanks, Chair. And I think in response to the question about the outstanding item, was it being progressed? Yes is the answer. We are looking at that. We obviously had an original date of March 25 on the basis this would be looked at for the 25-26 budget. I don't think we quite got there. I think there was definitely some work from my perspective looking the other way, council to IJB. We definitely had a look at that, but doing it the other way, we're now doing both ways, and with obviously NHS as well. So we're looking at that to ensure that we understand, I suppose, the cost of services and the level of service and the service standards that ultimately we need to have delivered, because they've been quite variable over time. Certainly over this last time, I know that finance, not surprisingly, has put in a great deal more than in previous years, for example. So something that we do want to capture from a partner's point of view, but also from the IJB's perspective. So I think helpful recommendation, we'll try and get that closed off as soon as we can and get that evidence to Jamie in order to confirm that that's been done. Thank you.
Okay. That's great. Very reassuring. We've got that robust two-way conversation amongst partners underway. So if there's no more questions, can we agree 5.1, the recommendations for 5.1? Committee's happy with that? Yes. Grand, thank you. 6.1 is the delivery plan update. So a lengthy, lot of reading there. That's from Callum.
That's
or
myself.
Stuart.
That's myself, Chair. Yeah, I'm stepping in for Alison,
Yeah.
so you've a lot less glamorous version today. I've got a few things I just wanted to cover very briefly. I think the correlation between the delivery plan and budget savings in the financial report has already been covered and discussed by Fiona, Bernie and Jonathan at this stage. But I think it's important to note that this year one delivery plan was developed at the same time as the strategic plan, and work on delivering against these actions have already started. So the previous decision was taken not to submit it along with the strategic plan, but to include a high-level 4-year route map for delivery instead, and that ensured that the strategic plan was kept at a strategic level for the IJB. So the delivery plan is then that operational tool to deliver on our strategic plan, and as such, it's appropriate that obviously this committee is the governance route for endorsing it, and monitoring delivery. So due to the time in the RAPC meetings versus the availability of quarterly reports, we brought the final quarterly report of the year 3 delivery plan in relation to the previous strategic plan to the June meeting of this committee. We then brought forward the year 1 delivery plan of the new strategic plan to this meeting for RAPC's endorsement, and then from November onwards, this committee will get progress reports at every meeting. The reporting framework has been developed and endorsed, and that was back in June by this committee, and the first progress update will be reported to SLT on the 10th of September. I think there was a previous query around the dashboard, and that's currently under development, and the first draft will be reported again to our senior leadership team on the 10th of September. So in November, we would intend to update RAPC and the progress in relation to quarter 1 and quarter 2, utilising that dashboard approach. I'm more than happy to take any questions, but I think that answers some of the previous queries around how we're able to interrogate some of the finer details using the dashboard, which will be coming online very soon.
Thanks. Could I just ask on the dashboard, so that's going to use Power BI technology. Can you just give us a little more information on the function of the dashboard? Because that looks like that's going to be a really important way of monitoring and keeping up to date with delivery against the delivery plan, where there are where there are gaps or whatever.
Yeah.
So, I mean, will that be quite user friendly, and we'll be able to see some useful narratives that are legible to those who are not experts in this area?
Yes. So thank you, Chair. Callum is obviously responsible for the development and delivery of that, so he'd be a far better person to answer this question than me. But yes, SLT will obviously have first sight of it, but it'll be tailored by those who view it. So this committee, SLT, etc., IJB, will be able to ask questions of it, and it'll adapt and change to suit the information that we need using Power BI and data analytics. So the intention is very much to make that user friendly and allow us to interrogate the detail that we want to see moving forward. So to answer your question, yes is the short answer.
That's helpful, because I think it's going to be a really helpful tool to track activities. Fiona, did you want to come in on that point?
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thanks, Stuart, for covering for Alison and Callum. I guess we might have had the dashboard here if that pest chief officer hadn't met with Callum and asked to see it, because everything looked green, which I was like, this is fantastic, because we hadn't met the timelines. But I said I was really keen that the dashboard gave us, are we going in the right direction? So is it amber because we're not sure we're going to make the timeline by the end of March or whatever the deadline was? So poor Callum probably wanted to murder me and then went away to do a little bit more work on the dashboard, just so we could really have that. Where are we at in the journey? Is it red? Are we nowhere near going to make the target of the deadline? So poor Callum went away to do a bit more work on the dashboard, because I think that would be much more meaning to the dashboard rather than everything's green, because the timeline is, the target is, say, March 2026, and that's where we're going to. So that's probably why the dashboard's been delayed a little bit, because I think that's a little bit more complex to try and work that out. Thank you.
Yeah, but that is encouraging to know that it's being refined, developed, so that it's going to be as useful a tool as possible, because we will need to have really up to date, clear information being provided. So thanks for that. Hussein.
Thank you very much, Chair. I've got two questions. I'll seek your indulgence on the second question, but we'll get to that in a moment. Thanks, as always, for the report. It's really well laid out. I've got a question regarding the digital inclusion plan and how the reporting for that is going to work. And just to put a bit of context around it, we're an aging society on the one hand. We're also increasingly becoming a more digitized society, and we know that technology is going to be a key driver for meeting our financial goals, but also for improving the way in which we deliver care. We also know that there currently is, I would say, a significant challenge among some of our demographics when it comes to accessing technology, which is where the digital inclusion plan comes in. I guess my question is twofold. Firstly, what's the route to seeing what that plan is, how that's going to work for the people that we support, what that actually means in practice, particularly given our financial constraints in terms of being able to deliver that plan, but also what does that mean for the overall delivery of technology going forward? Because whenever you have to mitigate something, you know, by definition, you have to either slow down what you're doing, or you have to commit additional resource to provide those alternative channels. Those alternative channels may well disappear in time as society moves on. But I just wondered what the kind of thought was in the immediate future.
Thank you very much for your
Sure.
question, Hussein. I'm going to find it very difficult to answer that one. If you'll permit me, Hussein, and through yourself, Chair, I would like to contact my colleague, James Maitland, who's leading on that area of business, and be able to come back with a fuller answer rather than me try and ramble on through something that I'm not entirely familiar with in that respect, if that's okay, Hussein.
No,
That's fine.
absolutely. I think we'd all appreciate, you know, a full answer, you know, when you've had the time to pull together what you need. So I'm very happy for that, Chair, and I'm happy for that to come via, if the committee is agreeable, to come via service update, if that helps the committee stay on track. And if you need me to put that question to you in an email, then just let me know who I'm sending that to, and I'm happy to do that. But my second question, Chair, and this is where I seek your indulgence, I'm having some difficulty with getting, you know, rationalizing the different versions of reports that we've had that have come here. But either in this report or the previous report, and I'm not going to stray into the previous one, but at some point there is a mention of prescribing, and that's obviously a key focus for us, again, linked to the financial position. There's a mention somewhere, and apologies, I can't cite the page number right at this moment, of a 10% wastage figure. And I know we're doing a lot of work on educating the people we support on how to use prescriptions more effectively and how to use that service. I guess my question is, as we go forward and we're looking at prescribing, and it's part of our strategy overall with the public, where does that figure get reported? Is that something that will come through the delivery plan, or does that get reported somewhere else? It was just for clarity, Chair, if you don't mind.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's probably in various of these categories. What's the response? That's a good question. Any thoughts, Fiona? Is your hand up to help?
I will try and answer that. The first question I'm more comfortable with is saying that you asked. So there is a digital paper coming to the next IJB, Hussein, and James Stewart, who's going to defer to James, is presenting that paper, Hussein. So maybe some of that questions will definitely come up through there, but happy for any of that to come through then. Perhaps see if that's what you're looking for. But I guess, so that's a bit for there. I think about the digital stuff. It was always some of our reserves we'd always earmarked for digital and for digital work. Unfortunately, the reserve position, as you know, is the reserve position, and we've lost that opportunity. But you know, I'm holding out there are potential bids for money. We were successful in getting 1.3 million from the government for our social work app. So I think we will be absolutely looking to things like that can continue for us to do that investment in digital and technology, because I think that's absolutely, it's one of our key drivers for that prevention, early intervention opportunities. I think there is that opportunity spend to save, and that's some of the things that we will maybe have to take to different committees to get that support for us to do that, because I think there's definite opportunities with digital. So that's question one. Question two, yeah, so I think that's definitely an NHS Grampian, the 10% of waste. That's definitely and there's been a big campaign through NHS Grampian round about prescribing and waste of medicine and stuff. But I think we have to, it's one of those make every opportunity count. When I was the chief nurse for the partnership, I used to often hear from my community nursing teams about going into people's houses and cupboards full of medicines. So there's that conversations about take some responsibility, make every opportunity count, and have that conversation. So I think it's all, we're definitely as a team, we're trying to make sure that our teams are all thinking about, you know, not just thinking about what they're in there doing for the task that they're there for, but to have that conversations. I think that oversight comes through there is a prescribing group that myself and Emma King and Bernie will be invited to if she hasn't been already, and that's an NHS Grampian wide group, Hussein, which absolutely looks at that costs, the savings and all the rest of it. So we have that Grampian wide messaging for that. So that group sits within NHS Grampian, and I'm trying to remember that it's David Flegger, who's the Director of Medicine. Goodness sake, the Director of Pharmacy for NHS Grampian, it's his deputy that chairs that group, Hussein, so that's where that oversight comes through. But we're happy that we can take some of that information and feed it back through ourselves that's specific for Aberdeen City. Thank you.
So at a risk of testing everyone's patience even further, Chair, and taking up everybody's time. So where does that reporting then feed in at an IJB level? Obviously, our share of that budgetary spend, where does that sit? So that as an IJB, we also have a handle on it, because obviously, yes, it's NHS Grampian wide. It's a one for North East Scotland approach, which is the right thing to do. But what's the reporting route into the scrutiny and accountability for the locality side?
So, Bernie, were you going to step in here?
Yeah, I think comprehensively, recognizing the journey that not only the IJB is venturing into, but all the local authorities, the government as a whole is venturing into further digital improvements and growth, not just in the back office, but also forward facing as in the involvement of the community that we serve. We have to invest in technology that will serve our purpose very well. You've asked a question, Hussein, about where is this being recognized. This will be part of the strategy and transformation. I don't want to use finance speak here, but I hope everybody can understand when I say the term cost center. So we've got a cost center called strategy and transformation. So this area covers all this divestiture and investiture into technology and further improvements in the way we work. Stuart has talked about this Power BI dashboard. We in finance are also developing a Power BI dashboard where decision makers like Fiona, Martin, Sandy, Alison can very well have a picture frame of, hey, where are we at the moment? Sometimes an ordinary Excel spreadsheet can be convoluted and there's so many figures to look into. But if you're looking at a Power BI dashboard, it's like a 101 education straight away. It's like when you're driving a car and you want to know what your speed limit is and how fast are you going. The Power BI dashboard basically is like a frame of the data that you need in your on your fingertips straight away. Jonathan and I also regularly spar with each other as regards further improvements on disclosures and reporting. So we work on the basis that full disclosure, we disclose everything that there is to know. We sort of like look into what are things that people do need to know. And we are sort of like diligently, microscopically trying to analyze what should Fiona be looking at in order for her to carry out a very diligent decision-making exercise. So in answer to your question as regards where are these digital costs being disclosed, we've got a cost center called Strategy and Transformation where it monitors all these improvements in digitalization and whatever informative tool we will need so that all the information relevant data are always available for Fiona for her decision-making exercise. And for teams like you, for people like you tonight, eventually when we have this available, the Power BI dashboard available, surely Stuart, Alison, and of course us in finance can of course share them over with you. We're just looking forward to that. We're just developing the dashboard in a more viable, readable 101. No disrespect to anybody, but dashboard for dummies, sort of like, you know, appearance, so that everybody can understand where we're coming from. I hope that answers your question, Hussein.
It does, but I would, at the risk of really testing the chair now, can I push on the prescribing side? Because it was really the reporting on where do we see that prescribing data coming, Chair. I'm sorry to belabor this point, but I think it's important in terms of where we're going. I'm just looking for the route where that information comes and how we as an IJB have the scrutiny of it. Apologies.
No, I like that question. Fiona, were you going to contribute?
Yes, thank you, Chair. And I've been reminded about an internal audit that we had related to this in the past, Hussein. And it was so, and I'm just going to read, so please excuse me while I'm reading. So the challenge, I think, round about our prescribing is the data often comes nationally. So we are at the mercy of national data, so there is so much data we can get locally, but there is a little bit that's challenged by us because of national, believe it or not. And we have challenged that many times and are afraid hitting a brick wall, I would say. But we are working with the government bodies to improve access to prescribing data and information on funding to aid our financial planning. And it was Leslie who was the name I couldn't remember earlier. So Leslie said it's the medicine management team, which is the group that I was referring to earlier. They produce and discuss at the primary care prescribing group all aspects of prescribing within Aberdeen City Health and Social Care Partnership. So if there is a structure within NHS Grampian that we feed into and feeds out to us, but we can absolutely think how we capture that and share with yourselves going forward. I will take that as an action to make sure that we get that in a future report. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Will that be helpful, Hussein?
I think absolutely
I'm very
is,
supportive of this.
Yeah, I think, and in future committees, maybe for an offline discussion as to what that means in terms of the reporting framework. But thanks, Chair. I think that is really helpful because I think it's going to be a key issue for us going forward, because it is also very much dependent on, you know, it takes two to tango, as they say, what our public do and how we relate to them in this. So, a lot of it we can control, but equally a lot of this will be demand driven and attitude driven by society.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. I mean, we've just had a bit of a discussion around digital, and I wanted to kind of extend that slightly and maybe in a slightly different direction. There's mention in the paper of technology-enabled care, and that's also included in the board assurance and escalation framework. There's no there's no target value put against technology-enabled care. I'm asking very much because when I was at the Stonywood Complex Care facility, it was fascinating to read about the developments in technology, motion-sensitive devices. There's obviously a great deal of technological advance that's happened, and I think there will surely be improvements and efficiencies that will be enabled, and that are our ambition for technology-enabled care. But that doesn't seem to have target any kind of economic values against it. And I'm mindful that there are risks in over-relying on things, over-relying on digital. You could have we have an overemphasis on pharmacological solutions. So you have to strike that balance where you're realistic about what it can actually achieve, and within its budget envelope. So is it possible just to get a little bit more information on that as part of the operational delivery plan? Fiona, you're going to
I will
come in.
try my best, Chair.
Sorry, that was a bit rambling. I'm sorry.
No, and I think the Stonywood example is a great idea, is a great example of an opportunity for us. So in Aberdeen City, we've absolutely been really at the forefront of some of the technology-enabled care and that drive to commit to that, and taking our providers with us on that and the local population. I think Stonywood's a really good example of seeing that really come to the fore and what savings can we use with it, because the people that are in Stoneywood, because of the complexity of their needs, they have got very high care packages. The idea is, because of the environment that we've given them, and exactly that you spoke about, all the technology that we've put into that services, is that we should see that care reducing, Martin. So it's a really good test for us to see, with everything that we've done, will it give us the savings that we're expecting? So I guess that's why it's not got a saving against it, because I think it's really hard to measure that. But that's a really condensed service that we will be able to have that greater understanding. And that evaluation, I've been very clear with the team that we need to be able to evidence the value Stoneywood has, because we've had a significant investment in there, and it needs to be able, the purpose of that was, in the longer term, we should see a reduction in care. So agree with you 100%. I think we haven't got a value against it because it's hard to measure, but Stoneywood will give us that. It's much easier to measure it there because it's not spread across the city. And it's difficult because, as you know, people's needs go up and down. So sometimes we do need to wrap around people, even though they've got tech. But I think the Stoneywood will be a great test for us to really get that strong evidence that with the right tech in place, we can reduce that care.
Yeah. Thanks very much. I mean, there is significant investment going in to technology and devices, and we've got to get it right. So, I mean, maybe this is another example of an offline discussion that we could have, just to go into some of the details and see how get some of that practical information to understand how that's reflected in the delivery plan and its performance. So thank you very much. On to Richie.
Yeah, thanks, Marlon. My question is partly been answered. We just want to tease out one bit a bit further. And it is thanks to Stuart and Fiona, I think, at the very start for the introductions. It was around the dashboard and I guess the timing and the sequence of events in terms of when we'll see actual performance information coming through. So that'll come through next time round, which is great. I also recognise there's a close link between the delivery plan and the budget report as well. And that'll continue in future reporting arrangements as well. That's clearly an intrinsic link between the delivery plan and budget. So I guess I'll leave that with you guys, how you figure out what detail goes where. But I guess that my principal point is around, I guess, the performance monitoring again. And for some of the activity there aren't any timescales. And if you kind of alluded to it, it's maybe difficult to put a timescale or a target against some of them. Yeah, but it'd be really helpful, I think, for those that are a bit more open-ended in nature, just to get a sense of how we measure progress, therefore, in terms of are we on track or not. So when it starts to come back through in terms of performance reporting in future meetings, just to get that feel from the dashboard around, well, are we on track? How do we know? And again, if things are starting to perhaps not be quite on track, then I guess anticipating the kinds of questions this committee might ask, it'd be good to have, I guess, just some commentary around, and here's what this is not quite on track, but here's what we're doing to try and address that, or here's a kind of an update just in terms of what the game plan is. So, no, welcome the paper. I think it's a good context, and I think that the ongoing monitoring is going to be key for us, just I guess, to be assured that things are moving in the right direction. But that was my main points. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Any feedback from Stuart or anyone, or content with that, Fiona?
Again, I will try my best. Alison's never getting to miss this again. I'll do my best. So some of them, you're right, they don't have targets, Richie. That's because this is a delivery plan for this year. So some of them are linked to the Lloyd project. So some of the prevention stuff's going to take a wee bit longer, but the majority of this is our delivery plan for 25-26. So that's where I was saying earlier that the performance dashboard, everything was green because the targets were March 2026, most of them. But it's like, well, actually, but are we on target to deliver that, which is that work that Callum's doing? So yes, they don't have the dates, but the targets will mainly be, because this is our delivery plan for this year. So it's a this year target. Hopefully I hope that's enough, Richie.
Okay, thanks for that. Happy with that. John?
Thanks. Yeah, if I could just briefly return to primary care prescribing. If you're the group in NHS Grampian that's looking at this, to what extent are they talking to other health boards? Because it's a particularly intractable problem, because you can't put a cash limit on it. If a person goes to the GP in February or March and the GP says you need a prescription, you get a prescription. I just wondered if what we're doing at kind of national level to kind of share some best practice.
Yeah.
Thank you, John. And absolutely, some of the decisions that we're being made are influenced nationally as well, which is helpful. So I think there is really good cohesion nationally about this. And it might be, I've gone to the doctor and I've traditionally got a tablet, and we've now changed. It's because it's the same tablet, it's just a different supplier, so it might have a slightly different name. But if you actually read the ingredient of the drug, it's the same, and that a lot of that comes nationally, which helps. But it's all to do with licensing, and it gets very complex, John. And I am no pharmacist, thankfully, but it gets quite complex. But I think there's a lot of that work happening to make sure that we're getting best use of our best value for money, because we're changing some of that medication onto different brands because that's a cheaper brand, and that's absolutely being driven nationally. So well connected, John, but it's a good point. Thank you.
Okay, could I ask a further question on that? I mean, we've got two very considerable budget savings in the delivery plan, which is reviewing older elderly care and delivery of services. I think it's daycare for those with learning disabilities. I mean, those are very, very challenging targets. So will there be consideration, some research done to find alternative delivery models so that we can be assured that we're continuing to provide excellent quality of care with reduced resource? I know that that's a huge tension, but yeah, you can always learn from elsewhere, Fiona.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and absolutely, and I think that's where we are being flexible as we go through the year, Chair, because although we put in the Learning Disabilities Day Centres, some of it would actually be, if we didn't offer that service or some services, it would be dearer to give them something else. So maybe that's the break that individual's parents need if they're, you know, as people with learning disabilities are living much longer now, so we're finding the elderly parents. So there is that. So although that is on there as a saving, we will be doing what we can to make sure we're using best value. That might change a bit, but we might need to find that savings somewhere else. So if we're not going to hit that savings there, we need to find something else that we're going to find the savings. So I think it's definitely, it's a little bit fluid, because we want to, exactly as you're saying, we want to make sure that we're making the best decisions, and actually closing all might not be the best thing to do. And it's like the Len Ironside will not be closing because it's a day centre for people, but we will not be closing that because we know if we close that, it will be much more expensive what we need to put in place. So it is that fine balance. So yes, it's difficult. Yes, there's savings against them, but I think we are fluid in how we do that, because we have to make the right decision for people and make sure that it's going to be the best value.
Yeah.
So there are targets there, but they might change as you say, as we go through and we learn that actually looking at all these individuals, it's not the right thing to do. So we're going to have to keep a bit of a resource there, because there will be some needs still that it's more efficient to keep that. The older adults, I think we're confident. We've done a lot of work around about our contracts, and I think that's going in the right direction, certainly.
Okay, thank you. I mean, I think very often the most appropriate solution isn't always the most obvious, but as long as we pay attention to the eligibility criteria, do what we can to maintain service standards. Yeah, and it does involve some fresh thinking, thinking outside the box and so forth, but absolutely important challenge for this delivery plan. So thanks very much. Malik?
Thanks very much, Chair. I think question been already answered in detail by Fiona, but my next question is on page 82. Deliver efficiencies from the robust management of vacancies. And if you go on outcome and impact, a reduction in staffing costs 1.3 million pound, vacancies may be slow to fill, which could potentially impact service delivery. Managers will keep this under continual review. Post redesign could potentially impact traditional ways of the working, and staff will be supported to adapt. Can you give me some more detail in relation to the service delivery impact?
Service impact. So, Fiona.
Yeah, and
Thanks.
Sandy might well want to come in on this, but I think we're well on way to achieving this target, Councillor Malik. I think we've put in very robust processes round about our vacancy panel. We have a vacancy control, we've a vacancy protocol that all staff are asked to complete. And I guess it's that before they fill that in, being very thoughtful about, can that post be done differently? Can we look at it? Can we redesign the post? Does it need to be the same pay band as it is previously? Can we redesign that and distribute some work and put that as a lower band or grade? So all of that's happening to make sure that we do it. The service, I think we're very much doing that balance. So I've been quite clear, and Martin's sitting on the call and he does a lot of the oversight and the signing off of posts, is that we are protecting our frontline services. So that's been an absolute key message that we have taken in Aberdeen City Health and Social Partnership. We're protecting our frontline services. So frontline posts are absolutely supported. But what we do ask is, can you just make sure that you've considered redesigning that post before you put it through? And do we need to keep it at the same level as it has been before? So that's one of the steps that we're doing, but we are absolutely protecting our frontline services, and all of those posts that need to come through are coming through. So it's not impacting on our service delivery. Thank you.
And Sandy.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for the question. And developing Fiona's point slightly, I guess what we're really doing, I think other parts of Grampian will have to start doing much more of now. Really rigorous vacancy management processes, questioning ourselves in a kind of healthy way, critically. Do we need that post? Can we redesign that post? And an example, I guess, this is just one example, but I'm sitting currently in the health village, and we have receptions without receptionists, two receptions without receptionists. Now, back in the day of the health village being invented, I would have thought that was unimaginable, but we've done and found other ways of doing that. And the benefit of that will be we're keeping some other posts in order to then protect those posts. We're having to make kind of difficult decisions elsewhere. But I would want to give people assurance that through the whole process, including, I mean, as Fiona has said, Fiona was the chief nurse, and quite correctly, her ultimate focus as chief officer is patient outcomes and client outcomes, and everything is looked through that lens as we challenge vacancies. There is a tension, some of it is difficult. It's part of, if you like, agree and disagreeably. Fiona and I might have a different view on some posts, that's fine too. It's part of that challenge, but I would assure you that everything is done to say what posts can we protect by potentially redesigning and changing vacancies once they come into place, reminding ourselves that NHS Scotland, we employ more people, more of our staff are employed by NHS Grampian by a long way than Aberdeen City Council. So we can't and don't and won't be making people redundant. That's not an NHS Scotland policy. So we have to operate at the kind of, when vacancies arise, what opportunities are there?
Okay, thank you. I think that questioning attitude is very helpful. The wording in that section mentions, I suppose, questioning traditional ways of working. So looking afresh at how to deliver and become more impactful. I think that's very welcome all around. And I mean, it leads to job satisfaction when you're seeing that you're making a difference, when you're making an improvement with the with patients and the people that you're serving. So that's good. That's all the questions. Can we agree the recommendations for 6.1 on page 75? We happy with those? That's fine. Thank you very much. And our final paper is the workforce plan report from Sandy.
A definition of good leadership, Chair, is to surround yourself with people who know more than you. So I'm going to, on that basis, I'm going to bring in Grace to just give an overview on the paper. Thank you.
Grand. Thank you.
What a charmer, Sandy. What a charmer. Thank you so much, Chair. And before you is the final progress report for the ACHSCP Workforce Plan 2022-2025. Our workforce plan was developed and written at the back end of the pandemic period, where our priorities at the time were about remobilising and getting services back to face-to-face appointments, which actually seems like 10 years ago, but it was only 3 or 4. Our areas for the workforce plan were staff health and wellbeing, recruitment, retention, and growth and development. It would be remiss for me not to mention that our workforce have achieved enormous amounts, and our annual performance reports against the strategic plan and delivery plan is a result of our committed workforce. This has all been undertaken while dealing with unprecedented demand for services, as well as difficult financial climate over the past year, as well as implementing changes like reduced working hours to our services. So within this report, it shows continuous progress against the 3 areas, which gives us a good baseline information to develop our future areas for focus for the workforce plan refresh, which we're about to embark on. Our workforce overview shows data such as headcount, whole-time equivalents, absence information, protected characteristics information, and our staff turnover. Our absence data shows that we still have a high number of short-term absences across our services, with main reasons being stress, anxiety, mental health, flu, cold and respiratory conditions, and gastro issues. Our staff turnover, however, has levelled and since the pandemic period, and also, unfortunately, does not reflect our in-house promotions, which I know we've done through our grow our own approaches. Some of the main highlights round about that is round about our career ready achievements, which attracts new generations into the sector, but also builds our mentoring skills with our current workforce. Bonaccord Care have also achieved a huge number of apprenticeships also, which is brilliant to see. Just off the back of the last question from the last report, the staffing protocol has added scrutiny and focus in our areas for frontline service vacancies and managing recruitment, and has already showed an impact into some of our achievements and job redesigns into 2025-26, showing that the flexibility and continued development of the workforce plan helps us shift to what the partnership needs to achieve. Some other highlights to bring forward is the successful workforce engagement events that we've had over this plan. So our conference events such as celebrating achievements, sharing best practice, and these events also focused on staff values and staff feeling valued, all of which we want to make sure is continued into the next workforce plan. Staff living the partnership values and feeling valued within the workforce too. Raising the profile of the partnership has also been good to see the social media presence with all of the services being promoted, also some of the achievements that's been done. If we have had any recruitment that we need to promote across our social media, we've seen a good uptake on that too. And then what we've also highlighted within the report is some of the key areas that we want to take into the next workforce plan. That's also some of that areas have been highlighted within the new strategic plan and roadmap to develop our workforce plan. So we'll be taking that to the IJB in December, which doesn't seem that too far away. But I'm happy to answer any questions and I'll try my best. If not, I will be asking for my backup from the team too. But I hope that's been an okay overview.
Yep, that's been really helpful. Thank you. I'm going to kick off with a couple of questions. Really good to see those back placements, and they are increasing over the last 3 years. There's also the mentoring element. Is there scope to expand these learning opportunities? I really do feel that they are essential for the future sustainable well-being of the work of the IJB. Sandy.
Absolutely. I think we're always looking for, sorry, Sandy, I'm coming in there, but we're also always looking for mentors as well within the workforce, but Sandy probably has more information on the career ready.
Yeah, I think yes is the answer. We could further develop that. I mean, we've got really good links with ABZ Works, who have a fairly limitless supply of people who want to and are ready to move into work, and a relatively limited kind of set of connections. So we can help with, and we have providers, Bonaccord Care being a really good example, who are, as part of a national challenge, drawing people into social care is difficult. So those are the kind of things we've done quite a lot. We've held a lot of sessions on sites in buildings, including the Health Village and elsewhere, to come and showcase people and say, this is a career. There's porters here, there's receptionists here, there's doctors and nurses as well. So we've got a lot of opportunities to do more of that in Martin, amongst others, has really led the way in developing and broadening that mentorship across the wider partnership.
Okay, I think that would be really welcome. It would add a lot to the learning and training environment, and the industry, the care providers and so forth. I mean, when you speak to them, they say we're always willing to take part in more mentoring, voluntary support, even as well as looking for more involvement through placements and so forth. So maybe it's a case of putting some polite, gentle pressure on them to match their those positive words. I had another question on section 4.3, which mentions an encouraging increase in headcount and FTEs. So it would be good to have an explanation of that, given the very challenging economic environment that we're operating in and that we will be operating in with the 4-year strategic plan. Grace.
I think reminding that this is the workforce plan from 22-2025. We did have quite a bit of investment round about the pandemic period, round about our head count and support services. And yes, that has increased over that period of time. We know that will shift over the next, and what we have to look to achieve, again, that staffing protocol helping us move that flexibility away. But I think right enough, it is that period of time, and it is kind of a kind of shift of where we're wanting to look forward to next. But Stuart's got his hand up. He's maybe got something else.
Yeah, I was just going to supplement some of that if I could, Chair. Thank you. Yes, we've already seen through this first period as well reduction. So I think we'll have to bear in mind that this is obviously from 24 into the early part of 25, and I think, as Fiona and Sandy have already mentioned, in terms of our vacancy management protocols, etc., we have the figures for that, which we can't include in this report, obviously, because it is for that year that we already are seeing an introduction. But I think if we look back to when this workforce plan was pulled together post-pandemic, and take into consideration the challenges that we've faced over the last 12 to 18 months, I was very well warned by Sandy in the writing of the plan around the age demographic of the workforce. I think it was classed as the great retiral that was coming. And what we've actually managed to do, which is a real positive over the course of this workforce plan, is if you look at the figures in relation to young people coming into the workforce in terms of that age bracket between 18 and 25, the career ready, the mentors, etc., we've significantly increased that. Now, whilst that won't come with the experience that we may then lose with folk retiring, it does give us that element that we're increasing the workforce, or rejuvenating it, if you like, and we're taking younger people into the workforce in health and social care across Aberdeen and indeed across Grampian. So I think it's very important to remember those two things when we talk about the increase in headcount, that this vacancy management protocol has already had an effect, and we'll be able to bring that through, and you'll see it in the figures on our first year of the new workforce plan, as I say, which will be ready in December of this year.
Okay, thank you. Will the forthcoming refreshed 4-year workforce plan have an element of flexibility and dynamism within it? Because because as you mentioned, there'll be kind of new generational demographics and ways of working and so forth. So it would likely have to have a slightly different complexion to that previous.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think we're absolutely taking our lead from the strategic plan. And I think if you look at one of the last elements of the report in terms of modernising our service delivery, prevention, early intervention, we definitely need to take the lead from the strategic plan, both in terms of making sure we have sustainability moving forward, but also that we keep a workforce plan that isn't, for example, 10 priorities and 30 actions under those priorities. It's about what can make the real difference over the next 4 years moving forward, taking into consideration the financial climate, taking into consideration the resources that we have available, and what we want to achieve through our strategic plan. Because when the strategic plan was approved earlier in the year, there's a lot that follows on from that. That's not just workforce, it's carer strategy refresh, it's equality outcomes, it's many other things that follow on from that. So we will absolutely make sure that we're aligned with and take the lead from our strategic plan.
Grant, that's really reassuring, given that the strategic plan and the workforce plan absolutely have to correspond. That's great. Thank you very much. John.
Yeah, thanks. Just a couple. I think the staff turnover figures are commendable because they're going in the right direction. And I need to apologise to Grace because I've written in my notes, email Grace to ask about this, but I never actually got round to emailing you. So on the absence figures, I just wondered how we compare with other IJBs and how we compare with, say, pre-pandemic. And as I say, I really should have given you notice of that question. I just forgot to email you.
So what's the thinking?
Sandy's got the answers, I think.
As usual.
Some of the answers, John. I mean, it's like all our work. It's complex because we've got NHSG employees and Aberdeen City Council employees, and they count things in different ways. But in broad terms, if you look at our NHSG employed staff, then our sickness absence, unfortunately, is regularly above the Grampian average. Grampian doesn't share specifically data protection and all that stuff, doesn't share specifically IJB Murray figures and IJB Shire figures with me or us, but the Grampian average, we are broadly speaking just now as example at 6% sickness absence, and the Grampian average is broadly 5%. So the comparison to Grampian, which is most of our staff, then we are currently, unfortunately, higher. So I'm being transparent for the kind of committee's purposes. The NHS Scotland target, sticking with NHS for a second, is 4%. I couldn't tell you because I don't think they share the data about how all of their boards are going, but I guess that signals the direction that Scottish Government think we should be at a 4% target. And I think, despite what Stuart said, I'm not dictating what the next workforce plan will say, but I think it has a high priority about supporting staff to remain healthy and well, brackets, and reducing sickness absence. It's probably page 1 of the kind of on the sheet next to digitalisation opportunities.
Okay.
Thanks.
Grant, thank you. And Richie.
Yeah, one comment and 2 brief questions. The comment is I did like the activity around reducing attendance in meetings by 20%. That's it made me smile, but actually it's a really practical one as well. Over the years, we can find ourselves just getting drawn into more and more meetings almost without even realising. So just having something explicit as that, just to challenge ourselves and challenge the rest of the teams, I think is a good one. 2 brief questions. I guess in terms of transformation activity, the workforce plan, just looking for a bit of a comment or a bit of assurance around teams and managers being supported, if you like, in terms of that change process. If there's an appropriate way that's put in place that can just help manage that sometimes that difficult process of change. And the second one is maybe a more kind of individual one. The documents are kind of very good in terms of workforce overall, and I guess just also looking for a bit of assurance around how individual growth can be supported. I know there's kind of reference to Grow Your Own, and there's a section on growth and development, but just a bit of assurance, I guess, around that one-to-one type process and what can flow through in terms of developing individuals as well. So any comment on those 2 would be much welcome. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Sandy?
Yeah, I'll maybe mention a couple of things and then others can try and chip in if they want to. So I'll give an example of probably one of the most complex, difficult change processes we're currently facing as a IJB is around Rosewell House. And I want to rehearse all the discussion around that, but you'll be aware that it's a complex, large-scale change process. So if I use that as a kind of example, yesterday we were meeting fortnightly, our kind of overall steering group, which includes staff reps and includes union reps. And one of the parts of the paper, part of the agenda yesterday was a really good contribution from one of our OD facilitators, a lady called Michelle, who had done, prior to the meeting, there was an online survey to seek the views of the affected staff, i.e. all the staff at Rosewell, what our strengths were, what our weaknesses are, what areas of development we need as a team, or they need as individuals, where we should focus on over the next period of time. I'm not doing it justice, but it was a very, very comprehensive piece of work. And also propose things such as individual sessions for the staff without any of the managers there potentially soon, just to kind of allow them to air and share some things, and then that to be fed in a safe, anonymous way. So there's a lot of change management work around that process, and it's an example of what they do, what we do. I'm using that as an example because it is probably the most difficult change process we've got. In terms of individually, just maybe briefly mention, I'm always trying to promote to people, and we are promoting. We're very fortunate that our two partner stroke parent organisations have got very, very good individual development programmes. Aberdeen City Council have been long impressed by the various programmes they produce for health and wellbeing and personal development, and NHS Grampian do a very good version of that too. And what I encourage and what we encourage our staff to do is to follow. So, for example, manager development sessions run by NHS Grampian. We don't need to develop and invent them and spend money. We just need to send our people to them, and they are free to us. So that's the kind of things that I'm trying to, we are trying to do. I hope that answers some of your questions, Richie.
Thank you. And Grace, were you going to come in on this?
Yeah, it was just to support Sandy with some of that information. We are very lucky to have a team round about organisational development that helps us support in our change management with our teams and services. Also helps develop the rest of the strategy and transformation team round about our project management change, using tools such as ADCAR and making sure that we bring our staff along with us when there is times of change. We also have quite a good percentage rate on what we do round about our completed action plans, round about our iMatters responses as well. I think that that's the next stage. Obviously, when we get the iMatters reports, everybody fills out their engagement questionnaires every year, but actually that taking that next step into what each team's going to do to try and change that over the next year is always quite a good example of how we make sure that we're bringing our staff along with us, and that they have their own time for team development too. But yeah, it's one of those things that always an improvement to be done. You know, we myself and the OD team sit and wait for the iMatters percentage rate to come in every year, and we always looking for an increase. Unfortunately, we had a wee dip this year, but that's maybe understandable. So we're hoping to kind of make sure that we keep going and pushing on for that over the next years.
And Stuart.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, Sandy and Grace suitably stole my thunder there with change management and ADCAR, so I can't put the ODF team up in lights again, even though I would want to. But Richie, you mentioned there specifically, supporting staff through change. And on top of what Sandy and Grace have both mentioned, I think one of the aspects that we always take into the development of our workforce plan, and indeed the actions that stem from that, is staff engagement. So when we develop the last plan, and again moving into this plan, it'll essentially be engineered by staff themselves, and it'll be staff led. So our engagement and consultation processes through the development of the workforce plan will take into consideration staff views. What do you want to see in your workforce plan? What type of things will help you moving forward in the future when they've got the awareness already of the strategic plan direction? That in tandem helps us develop a workforce plan that is well received by the workforce, but obviously means something to the workforce as well, because they've helped develop it. So I hope that gives a little bit of further reassurance that it's not just about taking a plan to the workforce and saying this is our workforce plan. It's a workforce plan that's developed by the workforce.
Yeah, thanks everybody. Very helpful.
Thank you. I mean, there is considerable evidence in the workforce paper on support and care for staff, so that's good. That's good to see, looking after their health, their mental wealth, and their well-being. So that's good. Does the committee agree the recommendations on page 89? Yes, that's great. We meet again on the 19th of November. Wish you all well. Good to see you, Bernie, and thanks for being here. See you at the next meeting. Thank you.
Yep,
That's
thank
the
you.
end.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.